having to start from scratch in the end anyways. I've never been able to kind of take a project from somebody and then,
Yeah.
inside the session,
I
that they, with their routing and their kind of logic, it just messes with me.
It's a different part of your brain for sure. But I mean, there's value in it because sometimes you can save stuff in its more purest form than like having people commit and then you have to like put things back that were taken away, if that makes sense.
For sure.
If the overheads are just, high passed, all the way up to 700 hertz, and then I decide in the mix phase that I actually want the bottom, like I'm not adding that back later, I need their session to take that filter off. So, yeah. Sometimes
interesting example.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes that happens, and like if I just get the files and everything's committed, like it just is what it is with the files at that point. But if I had their session, I could be like, oh, look, your drum sounds way better just because I have all the information down there and I just took your one plugin off. Like I undid what you did. So it's helpful in those instances sometimes. But yeah, again, that's
There's also
that's why the relationship thing's important in what I do. Because yeah, I mean, sometimes if I were to take a session from somebody, it would become a mess and it would be weird and I wouldn't know. But other people, I know how they work. I've gotten sessions from them before. Like, I don't want them to commit to what they're doing type of thing, like, please give me your sessions so that I could take all the weird, phasey, like micro shift plugins that you have on every, track off. And your record already sounds better because, you were just in the heat of the moment, like working and producing, that you just started slapping, your vocal chain on everything that maybe didn't need that everywhere. So, but again, you find that out over years of collaborating and working with different people and that changes, that's relatively new for me. 2 years ago, I probably wasn't really getting many sessions from people, whereas now I probably get, I have like 2 or 3 producers I work with that I get sessions from. So
yeah. Would you say that you're a minimalist in the mixing department? Because it seems like you want less is more for you, is what I'm gathering.
Definitely. I mean, and I think less is more sounds better, like I think that's the biggest issue with the way music sounds nowadays is people are just mangling sounds so much that nothing sounds full in a weird way. Like even just EQ, man, like FabFilter Pro Q, I think is like the best and worst thing ever because the second, like I'm not a big purist as far as phase shift with EQs and everything. Like I don't fully understand the science, but it does, man. If you start like notching here, pushing here, EQing that, and you have this like FabFilter plugin that looks like a science experiment, yeah, you're messing with the like legitimacy of the foundation of that sonic sound. And you have that strewn across every single track in your mix. Like you're just losing so much solid. Yeah, it starts pushing in
clarity.
Yeah, clarity. Yeah, clarity. You lose so much clarity. And that's why I say sometimes I get sessions and I literally take their plugins off and I'm like, this already sounds better because you're not pushing and pulling a million like tiny little notches that, maybe is an issue. Maybe there is a weird resonance at 2K and we take that away. But like there's cleaner ways to fix that resonance at 2K. You could boost the low end.
Yeah.
Or you could turn the track down so that the resonance is quieter, but boosts top end so that it's brighter and comes forward. Or, like there's less intrusive ways than throwing soothe on everything and, being like, oh yeah, look, it sounds better. There's better, more like, purist, for lack of a better term, like ways to manipulate audio that allows the sounds to keep their integrity.
Yes.
So that's what I like. And yeah, anytime that I get a session, I'm always trying to stop myself from adding more plugins. I'm always looking at what I have and being like, can I fix this with just like a fader move? Can it like be a volume thing? Or can it be just like a big, broad, wideband EQ rather than like a million notches? Or can it be, I'm just always looking for the sort of purest, less intrusive way to fix a problem.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. It's like almost like a mastering engineer approach. And I think there's a cautionary lesson for the audience of like, it's amazing what we can do with our tools, and we should try things and see if it works. but then sometimes you got to just see what it sounds like without having done what it did, and maybe it sounds even better before, and you maybe went too far, and you need to like I know I sometimes need to do this, so like just check myself. Did that all those moves I just made, did they actually make it sound better? And sometimes, you know, the first 2 plugins did, and then the last 4 didn't, or you know, whatever it was. And I was talking with another guy in Nashville recently named Brent Hendrich, and he was telling me, he's like, you just gotta sometimes leave some of that nasty stuff in. Like the gnarly stuff is part of the sound, and that's what makes it, you know, less is more. Like let it be that sound.
Well, sometimes you hyper focus on that. Like that's an issue I get a lot of times. It's like sometimes it's just like an issue with a mix, whether it's just the way the vocal was recorded or even just whatever. Maybe it's not even a big issue, but for some reason my mind hears that and I can't unhear, like whether it be like the sibilant vocal or something that like you almost always overcompensate. You know, those records that I'm like, when I hear the rough and I'm like, oh, it's a sibilant vocal, I always overcompensate. And a lot of times I hear it after the fact and I'm like, oh, I should have just let that be a little more sibilant. Like I went way overboard cutting all the sibilants just because I was like insecure about that. And that was the first thing my ear like was drawn to. But now I overcompensated and now I made it worse, technically, probably. But
yeah, I think this is like a hump that I'm at with my mixing is like, because I know what something should sound like, or I understand what's sounding bad, and maybe I can figure out a way to fix it for almost all the issues. Sometimes that gets in the way of you just like lose the emotional kind of thing that should be the thing that's really guiding your mixing.
Yeah,
and you let the technician brain take over, and it's an inhibitor from like just letting the record just be and live and feel and breathe and emote.
Yeah, which again is why, like, to me, the rough is the Bible, even as sibilant or as weird as sometimes that may be. Like, sometimes that's the magic of the record, you know? That's, you know, it's about taming it and keeping it, you know, in check in a way. But if you get rid of so much of that stuff, it falls apart.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely minimalist, definitely always like interested in trying to just keep the integrity of the sound as much as possible without just destroying, you know, things. So
yeah, man, I love this. This is great. This is an important conversation, and people should listen to this segment.
Yeah,
and or at least I'm preaching to myself of like something that I need to listen to more and think about more. Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity to jump over to the sauce segment.
The sauce.
New segment since you were last on the show. Like this didn't even exist.
Yeah, I know.
Back on episode 33. So you sent me a song called "Sad Girl Thing" by Zoe X. So let's have a listen to that for about 90 seconds and chat about it. Sound cool?
Yeah.
Turn off, check out, I'm up and down. You don't understand and I can explain it. Wish you could hear my thoughts out loud. I'm tired of crying and line is shaking, thoughts racing. I count my blessings, then I forget them. Never learned my lesson, got me feeling restless. I should be grateful, but I'm selfish. If only you could see through me, maybe you'd feel differently. You say being happy should be easy, but believe me, it's never been easy for me. You say that I should let it go, finally let someone get close. You say being happy should be easy, but believe me, it's never been easy for me. It's a sad girl thing. It's a sad girl thing. Just a sad girl thing. It's a sad girl thing. It's a sad girl thing. Just a sad girl thing. It's a sad girl thing. Stuck in my head like every second. I've never been good at staying that present. I know you've got the best intentions. You can't understand if you've never felt it.
Yeah, Josh, sounds awesome.
Thanks, man.
I love the synth bass that kind of is like, you know, very dynamic and kind of builds up in volume.
Yeah.
And and her voice sounds awesome, like just super lush and not harsh, but great. Yeah. Tell me, and the low end when it finally comes in knocks. Yeah, tell me a bit about that
Thanks,
song.
man.
What went into it?
Yeah, it's a fun one. I like that tune a lot, actually. What went into it? I mean, the producer, Matt Harris, who produced it, killer producer already. So, I mean, that's a mix that kind of comes in dialed already. And then from there, it's just polish. And there's definitely some artistic things that I did in there that are like my stamp, let's say, that I think are cool. But yeah, it was, to me, I think my approach to that was, again, just improving upon the rough, really like kind of chiseling those edges and just sharpening the focus of some stuff, making sure that the bass does feel nice when it comes in and that it, is all the things. The vocal is dialed. Because I mean, it's that pop sound, so it's got to just be right there the whole time. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the two things that I did on that I guess they're maybe fun, they're like me playing, I guess, a little bit like playing, and having fun with it is like towards the end, there goes to like a down chorus, before like the whole thing kind of blows up. And I'm kind of obsessed with this plugin. It's called Lossy by the Good Hertz stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there's something just so nostalgic about that plugin. And like this song is very like Zoe stuff's like very like Y2K aesthetic, like very like early 2000s, that sort of type thing. So that plugin to me, Lossy, super cool because it just sounds like a bad cell phone. It sounds like you like a razor flip phone, like voicemail type vibe. And for like the down chorus, I put that on the vocal and it just sort of tied it together of just, kind of sounds like that sort of thing. And then also another thing that I do that's kind of fun is like there's delay throws kind of all throughout the song, I think. Maybe it's just in the second verse. I forget. But a lot of times what I'll do is instead of just like delay throwing, let's say like the last word of like a verse, I'll actually pull stuff from later in the song and use that as like a delay throw. So I'm almost like making fake ad libs that don't exist there. I don't know. It's kind of like a weird thing that I do occasionally, but it sometimes helps to story tell a little bit more, or it kind of helps to like foreshadow or like finish the thought. Sometimes I feel like, like a songwriter might write something and then at the end of the line, it makes sense to like come back to like something else. So I'd have to hear it in this song, but I think it was something like, she's talking about, how hard something is. And then like the song is like sad. I'm just a sad girl. So it's like, I put the, you take the, I'm just a sad girl and put it after a line about like how hard life is. And it makes more sense than just repeating how hard life is again.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm always thinking about in mixes. And again, that's sort of my like quote unquote way to play around and maybe like further the storytelling a little bit or even foreshadow. Like I've been known to take like a delay throw from like later in the song and make it the intro, like put it in like the intro instead of just like a ambient phasey intro. Like I'll put like a little filtered vocal in there so you get a hint for like what the song is already before it even starts. And again, sometimes producers want that gone. Like that's their art. They don't want my idea of what a vocal chop should be. Sometimes they love it. So, you kind of take a risk on that sort of thing. But that's kind of where I like songs that are already dialed sonically because I don't have to spend so much time like pushing and pulling and getting everything balanced. Like a mix like this already comes to me balanced. Like the rough is balanced. I'm not trying to like reinvent the wheel here. It just leaves time for me to have those instances where I can really push the song forward by telling a story a little more.
You're not just the fix-it mixer, you're the creative mixer.
Correct.
At that point.
And again, sometimes people don't want the creative mixer, and that's totally cool. Like, it's definitely not always the most fun when you put these like creative ideas in and somebody comes back and you're like, get rid of them, because it's like, oh, well, that was my art. But at the end of the day, like that's totally an ego thing. Like, so I'm always just like, yep, you're right. Like we'll get rid of that delay thrower. We'll get rid of.
Do you kind of like give them like a heads up, like, yo, check, I've added this thing. Let me know if you think if it's cool or whatever.
Sometimes.
Or do you kind of just let them discover it?
Sometimes it's people that I haven't worked with before, and I'm, insecure in the fact that like, oh man, I don't want them to be like, what the, what did he do here? But other times I'm just like, let it be a surprise. Let's see what they say.
Yeah. If you have a working relationship with the person, then it's like,
yeah,
especially then it's like, oh, I was looking for something like that.
Well, sometimes people expect it, at a certain point. Like once you start doing it, they're kind of like, they'll maybe send me stuff that's a little more stripped back. They won't do all their normal delay throws because they know that they'll trust that I'll do them. And that's always cool. So I appreciate that. But yeah, again, it comes back to the relationship style side of things, of just like knowing that and working with certain people. And